Welcome to FOBtv, the future of business. I'm your host, Kevin Benedict. I'm a futurist here at TCS, and I want to thank all of you for joining us today. Our guest, and I'm really excited to introduce him, is Gerd Leonhard. Thanks for joining us, Gerd.
Thank you. It's a great pleasure.
Now, Gerd ranks as one of the top 10 futurists in the world with over 1,600 engagements in 50 plus countries over the last 20 years alone. He has written 5 books, including the best-selling Technology versus Humanity. So if you haven't followed Gerd on his YouTube channel or on LinkedIn or read his books or watched his video series or any of that, you really must do that. So let me just jump in here, Gerd, again. Where are you calling in from?
Yeah, I'm in Zurich right now. I'm actually home, which is rare these days, but yeah,
Yes.
I'm here.
All right. So what's the weather like in Zurich today?
Well, it's dreary. November, December is usually kind of dark and wet. It's not snowing. That's Zurich doesn't get much snow anymore, but it's around 6, 7 degrees, and it's kind of getting winter.
All right. I shared with Gerd here just a few minutes ago before we started recording that as I'm exercising on my stationary bike, I've been just flipping through all of his different presentations, and a lot of the questions today are going to come from different things he said in the presentation, and we'll give him the opportunity to kind of expand on his thoughts there. So, Gerd, you mentioned in one of your presentations that I listened to this week that during the COVID pandemic, when there was less travel and less in-person presentations, that many of your clients, the leaders in those companies, seem more interested in therapy. And you define that as future therapy. Tell us about that.
Hmm. Yeah, if you ever been to therapy, I think you know what happens there is you go there only if you've got serious problems. And you don't go before, unfortunately. And then when you go to therapy, a good therapist will not tell you what to do. A good therapist, he or she, will try to work out a situation where you are recognizing what the issue is, and you have sort of a moment of an aha moment, where you say, this is what it is. And if I were to do something different, it could fix the problem, right? And you come to a realization, like a penny drop moment, right? And in a way, this is what I do with a lot of my clients. We have conversations. I show them things, and we talk, and they show me things, and eventually we get to this penny drop moment where the audience, or sometimes board members or CEOs, are realizing that all of a sudden something has become really clear. Like, if I did this, I could make a very big difference. And so you have this penny drop moment, and this is really what I'm looking for as an advisor, for my audience, especially of course in technology, is to realize that there's an option. If I took that option, it could make a huge difference. Right? And this is why I call it jokingly kind of a therapy.
So during COVID, you also seem to really focus on creating films. I know one of the films you flew to the Canary Islands, and that's a significant part of a lot of your presentations there now. Tell us about that. Is that a new kind of communication strategy that you just think is time has come and you want to focus there, and as opposed to just books or presentations? Because you really seem to be committing a lot of time to film.
Yeah, I've always been really interested in films about the future, and of course also science fiction. But I think what really happens is when you have a medium like film, especially when it's not too short, like most of mine are 10, 15 minutes, um, it grabs a lot of people in an emotional level, much different than a presentation, which is mostly on the intellectual level. And I try to go beyond that in my speeches, but it's hard when you're in a big venue or so, right? So when you're watching the film and you're watching it on your iPhone or on the computer or even on the Apple TV in the living room, you have 10 minutes and it makes impact, and you keep thinking. So when I think back on my life, some films like theater films like Blade Runner or so had made huge impact on my life. And then smaller films that I've watched over the years have really impacted my thinking. And so I figured I should do at least one a year, and we make it, pretty professional production. Um, so they're actually quite an effort to make, And we write a script, and we do pretty much everything that you do for a real motion picture, And out of that, there has been a lot of feedback from people saying the good future, which is what I did in Lanzarote, right, the film, that is the number one topic, because in the end, all of us want a good future. Nobody wants a lousy future, right? And because of COVID, there was a lot of rethinking about, how do we organize things to have a good future? Our healthcare system, our employment system, right? Working in the cloud, technology. How do we build a future that makes humans happy, or at least, self-realizing, you could say. Happy is a difficult thing to describe, right? But basically, what is a good future? And so I made the film. I got huge amount of feedback, and now I follow up that film with the Twice Upon a Time, which is two scenarios from 2030, one lousy one good one. And in the end, people get to pick. It's called Twice Upon a Time.
Ah, I look forward to seeing that again. I watched it earlier this week. So I have listened to many of your presentations over the last few months, actually, and you often introduce the concept that a good intuition is critically important to futurists. Now, that's interesting because I'm a futurist myself, and in the age of data abundance, you are promoting intuition or the value of good intuition. Talk to us about your thoughts there.
Well, I'm with Jeff Bezos on this when he says that he takes a lot of data and focus groups and discussions and logic, right? But in the end, he says he's deciding everything based on intuition and imagination. And I think that's what humans do, right? This is what we are. We love facts and data and all that stuff. But of course, if you torture data long enough, it will confess to anything, right? As the saying goes. And I can show you really powerful data on climate change, and then I can show you other data that says basically the opposite. And the strategy out of that would be very difficult to define. So now it's like 99% of people believe the data on climate change warrants us taking action, right? But you do need to use a narrative and a vision that comes from the data, right? So what I do is I read a lot, I talk to a lot of people, and then I get this hunch, where I say, okay, data is the new oil. That's 15 years old now, where I
Mm-hmm.
said this, right? And now I say the end of oil is coming, right? It's the end of oil is just, you can feel that coming close to the point of realization. So what you want to get to is what I call the hard future, and that is not the definite the tough future, but the definitive future, right? So you want to get to a point where you can say, my hunch is that this is the right thing to do, right? This is where the future will take us. And so that's how humans do things. If you ask an AI, for example, about how they would solve climate change, right? The AI would do the most logical thing, and that would be to get rid of all humans, right? That is the most logical solution. It's not a solution that we would want, but it is an obvious solution, right? That's because the AI doesn't know anything but the objective of the mission. It's just binary stuff. Yeah? And this is why machines, for a long time, until we get to the singularity 2050 or so, machines for a long time will not be able to do what we are doing, because we're not binary. We live our life in multinary. And we can question things, we can move beyond facts, we can imagine. Very hard to do for a machine.
Well, if I look at my own, pondering of big issues, there's a lot of gray areas that come and go. There's waves of insight, and then there's gray areas where you're not ready to make a call or a decision yet because you're still processing. And there's a lot of things around us that aren't definitive, aren't binary, are they? They're still in flux. They're liquid, they're fluid.
Well, but you can look at things like the metaverse, right?
Hmm.
And you can say, okay, let me take a close look what's happening here, and after you study for a while, you talk to a lot of people, this opinion can form, right? To where I always say the metaverse clearly is, technically speaking, not impossible. It's a tall order, as the CTO of Intel said. We need 1,000 times the computing power to make that happen, right? It's not impossible, but I don't think it's going to be the same than the mobile phone and the app smartphone revolution. I think it's just one thing that we're going to be doing, and certainly I believe that we will not be living in the metaverse, as Mark Zuckerberg says. And I jokingly call this a meta perverse, because it's really a perversion of what it's all about, which is to make life easier and to be a good tool. But a tool is not how I live my life. I use the tool and then I put it away. So that's the kind of conclusions that I come to by saying, sure, the metaverse is going to be a big opportunity, but it's not like it's not like a life-changing thing like the internet itself. In my view.
So you like to say in a number of your presentations that the future is already here. Why is that an important concept that you like to communicate to audiences?
Yeah, we've been now in the exponential technological change scenario for at least 10, 15 years. And Moore's law may be eventually unfolding because of the size of processors, but we are in the leap age, right? So if you go back 20 years, then you would say, oh, that's amazing. We can go online with a mobile phone and we can possibly even send messages for free. And now that's all here. I mean, we're leaping exponentially. So 4, 8, 16, in every 12 to 18 months and coming even shorter now. So in 2030, we're 256 from today. Let's say we're at 4 now, right? And 10 years after, it's 1 million, right? So it's hard to imagine, but this is why I'm saying the future's already here, because many things that we're looking at used to be science fiction, and now they're science fact, right? I can 3D print a house. I can 3D print, a dental implant. I can 3D print a kneecap, and this is all now becoming reality. I cannot 3D print a catfish like Star Trek. Remember that catfish that comes out of the replicator? I can't quite do that yet, but hey, we're here, right? And China, they're printing 3D houses all over the place for entire villages now, right? And GE is using 3D printing for printing airplane parts. Yeah. So basically, what is happening is that we're in the leap age, and that's why I say we should not misunderstand that we're basically in the age where every week there's a major breakthrough, and we are not at the speed anymore that we were at 20 years. The speed is going like this, right?
Yes.
And that's why I say the future is already here. So if you want to know what the future of cars is, or the future of whatever, you just go around the world and you look and you see it everywhere, right? It's like it's no longer science fiction. You can taste it. Yeah.
Mm. So, how do you feel social media has impacted humanity's view on the future? Is it is there a good contribution or is it all bad?
I think when social media started, it was great. I was a great proponent. I loved blogging and putting
Hmm.
out stuff. And of course, this is how I connect to many people. Then, 5 years ago, I looked at Facebook and I was saying, this is not right what Facebook is doing. It's not against the user agreement or terms of use, but it is unethical in my view. Using that data in the way they are and putting all that together and building a giant news machine, right? So really what social media has become is artificial intelligence, bad artificial intelligence, not doing a very good job filtering stuff and then regurgitating it so that I click on the ads, right? And that's not called media, right? That's a bad AI. And when you then think about that 40% of the world is getting their news on social media, well, then it's no surprise that democracy is declining in appreciation. A lot of people are saying democracy is unfit because of what we see on social media, right? It has created dissent. It hasn't brought us together, it's brought us in different places. And right now, at this very moment, we're seeing the reboot of social media, right? Facebook stock down 68%. Lots of people fired. Right now, Twitter, the
Hmm.
question of Twitter, is Twitter even going to be around? I think they will. I trust Elon will find a way out there. Right? But I mean, we're seeing this whole idea of social media derailed because it has turned out it's self-serving, right? And it creates advertising spaces. That's all it does, right? And that was never the original intention of any of the social media guys that I know. Not Reid Hoffman from LinkedIn, all the way to uh, uh, the founder of Twitter, and of course on search engines also. Now we're entering a different era where we're saying, does it make human sense to use this technology? Does it create value? And I think if Twitter can create real human value, societal value, right, it will do great. Right? Everybody else is going to fall by the wayside, including Facebook if they Meta, if they go on like this.
Oh, interesting. And Gerd, is such a timely conversation because just in the last few weeks, I had the opportunity to sit down with a relative. Uh, this person's in their 80s, and they were sharing some very unfortunate ideas and opinions. And I said, "Where are you getting those ideas and opinions?" And his answer was, "Everything I get, all my news is from Facebook."
Yeah, it's not
Oh
surprising. I
boy.
mean, really, yeah, you know what happens on social media is that bad news amplifies 6 or 8 times as much as good news. This is why so many people now around the world are saying the world is going to hell, right? Because they're only reading the bad stuff. I can give you an argument of saying 500 things plus have been greatly improved in the last decade. Childbirth, death, right? Political participation, payment of women and work, and on and long list, right? Nobody believes it because all they see is strife and discontent and garbage that they see on social media, and that needs to end because it is amplifying the wrong thing. Just because it's like a dystopian movie, like The Social Dilemma, right? Gets more
Absolutely.
eyeballs than one that says, this is how we're going to fix the problem, right? And
Yeah.
Social Dilemma is a great film, don't get me wrong, but
Yeah.
I'm just saying that most of the stuff that we see from Hollywood, Netflix, Bollywood, right, wherever you look, is dystopia, right?
Hmm.
And we need a better narrative. We need a narrative of a good future, right? A future that is not like DiCaprio's thing, where don't look up, right?
Yep.
Right? No, that's entertainment. Right? That's
Yes.
good. We need a
You
good story.
you stated in a recent presentation that you believe climate change is the biggest business opportunity ever. Tell us why you feel that way.
Well, I mean, the reality is, we have all of the tools and the science we need to solve this problem, right? It's not that we don't have the tools or the tech or the money, right? We have decided not to use it because using it changes the equation of the economics, right? And changes who makes the money, right? Because if you see what's happening right now, the next 100 unicorns, they will all be in climate technology. Right?
Wow.
So battery technology, the intergrid, smart cities, the Internet of Things. It's not just not using oil and gas, but also preventing pollution, preventing waste, right? I mean, all of these topics are subject of environmental issues, right? And technology has a solution for almost all of them, right? But we need to change our policy. The policy has to say we're not going to spend $5 trillion a year subsidizing oil, gas, and coal. We're going to spend 20 trillion a year to subsidize the development of all of these alternatives. And before you know it, it's entirely solvable. It will make money. The World Economic Forum says over 100 million new jobs
Mm.
in the green economy. Right? I always say green is the new digital. And if you miss that opportunity as a tech company, you are in deep trouble because big blue and big green kind of go together, right? Now, and basically, big tech is what makes big green possible, right? And then the next part on top of that is what I call big human, which is to change who we are, and that's another story, right? But right now, this is a huge opportunity, and see what's happening at COP27. If there is no breakthrough and serious things announced, we're going to see pushback and everything around the world emanating and forcing action on a political level. It's basically climate emergency now, just like it was COVID emergency, right? Same thing.
Mm. So, in one of your recent presentations, you also suggested that our greatest purpose going forward is to protect humanity. So, everybody likes to talk about purpose, but you're saying, yeah, but the summary of that is we've all have to have the purpose of protecting humanity. What does that include, in your opinion?
Well, I mean, the purpose of life in the larger story, right? nutshell, very simply put, is eudaimonia, which is a Greek word for happiness, well-being, flourishing, right? That's really what we all want. It's hard to
Mhm.
define happiness, of course, by itself, but none of us want to do bad. We all want to have the bottom line of the Maslow pyramid covered: food, water, shelter, family. That defines sort of a good thing, right? Um, and when we look in this direction, then all of a sudden it's quite clear that the current system will not provide that, right? Because it's kind of bottomed out in this simplistic worldview of profit and growth. And that has kind of worked when there was enough room to grow, and now that's limiting. Right? The purpose of life, right? That's one
Mhm.
thing. And then what we're looking at is to say, what is the purpose of our economy?
Mhm.
And now it's quite clear we finally are getting to what John Elkington called people, planet, profit.
Yes.
And I call that people, planet, purpose, and prosperity, the four Ps. I talk
Mhm.
about that a lot. And now companies are shifting, Patagonia, Unilever, IKEA, and so on, shifting into the stakeholder economy. Right?
Yes.
And now it's getting critical because now they can no longer just talk about it, right? Business Roundtable in the US, great conversations on the stakeholder economy, but
Yes.
sometimes they take actions that are on the opposite side, where they're, for example, trying to prevent Biden's Build Back Better
Mhm.
law, which then came back in some other way anyway. But so we have to take real action on this, because if we continue on this one purpose, which is to profit and to grow the top 10%, we're imploding. Right? And basically, what is happening is that our capital is increasing because we are on the top sort of 10, 20%, right? But natural capital is completely declining, right? So we're going to have more money in a completely failing world, right? And that can't be a good idea for our kids, right? Because it leads to war, it leads to 500 million climate refugees, and to a world of technology dystopia where everything that we do is monitored and creates sort of a constant, like a caption,
One of the things that you forecast is that change in the next 10 years will be greater than during the past 100 years. Where do you see that demonstrated the most?
Well, the power of technology is just mushrooming, right? I mean, my iPhone has the power of the machine that brought the Americans to the moon. Yeah, and now it's basically it's mind-boggling how technology is just exploding in capacity. So quantum computing, for example, yeah, or supercomputing, that's just around the corner. It's not 50 years; it's maybe 5 years, right? 10G wireless networks. Printing of electronic devices that don't use rare earth minerals, but they use synthetic biology to create them, and nanotechnology. All that stuff is happening around. I mean, this is why in the next 10 years will be a trigger point for countless technologies: 3D printing, solar energy, maybe even nuclear fusion, a little bit
Yeah.
longer, 10, 15, 20 years, right? And all these trigger points are reached, and they're impacting everything else. So, for example, smart machines, intelligent assistants, IA, I call it, not AI, right, will allow us to automate many things so that we can save resources and we can do other things that, so we don't have to do this kind of monkey work, right? Like drilling and those kind of things, and that's going to change everything, I think, mostly to the good. So really what's happening is here is this boost of things, but our policies and our collaboration is behind, right? So we haven't realized all the things that are happening, like social media, and we haven't really bothered to take a look and see how we can make it good enough for human benefit. We just kind of let it go, like the Internet of Things or so. We need to think further and make sure it has benefits.
Oh, yes. Over coffee this morning, I was reading on CNN, and it was including an article that announced the FDA had approved the first lab grown meat product in California. The company's in California, and they just approved the lab grown meat. And they use chicken cells to then grow and generate, lab grown meat. And that's part of that technology advance, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, I think, it sounds disgusting when you think about it, right? But I tasted this meat, parenthesis,
Hmm.
I think 3 or 4 years ago at an event. And I think it was Impossible Burger or Memphis Meats or one of those companies. But Bill Gates has invested, Richard Branson have invested, and really what's happening is here we've reached this breakthrough of fermentation technology that allows us to take the cell from whatever animal and grow it in the lab in like a cultured situation, organically, cleanly, no hormones, nothing, no dead animals, right? And to multiply the cells basically. So what you get is a substance that is akin to a hamburger patty or
Hmm.
and you can eat it just like you eat anything else. Right now it's too expensive still, but Bill Gates says 10 years from now it'll be 1/10 of the
Oh yeah.
price of the cheapest meat
So now
that you can
you have plant-based for those that want plant-based, and then you have meat-based but lab-grown.
Yeah,
Fascinating.
I always say jokingly the future is vegetarian.
Yes.
I'm not a vegetarian, but this is clearly where we are going. And this meat, of course, isn't vegetarian. It is from an animal, right?
Yeah.
But no dead animals. So that will
Yes.
redefine the whole discussion of vegan. I mean, we need protein, right?
Yeah.
And protein is going to be produced like this. And then right to next to the high rise where we make the meat, we have a high rise for vertical farming,
Oh yeah.
where we're going to have organic vegetables grown that are mostly taken care of by robots and by organic food specialists,
Yes.
and we'll just have one of those in all of those towns all over Africa, in hot regions where they can't grow food. We can have one of those, and the price for that is going to come down like the price of a making a phone call, right? And that
That
fills you
that's so
with great
fascinating
hope,
just to
right?
think of. And that
Yeah.
goes back to your thing. The future, you can either look at it with a dystopian viewpoint or you can look at it from a positive perspective because there's so many positive things happening as well. Now, one of the words that seem to come up all the time, and we meet with companies here at TCS and the leadership of companies and boards and all that as well. And everybody seems to keep bringing up the word ecosystem,
Mhm.
ecosystem, the new business model. What's your take on that for the future?
Well, I mean, it's clear in a connected society. I mean, we're getting to a hyper-connected society, right? Sometimes you could say it's an over-connected society, even, right? We're going away from this old definition of what I call an ecosystem, right? Which is like everything is made here, all the innovation is made in-house. We have all the patents, and you guys can do what you want. The car industry is a great example. Before Tesla, right? It was an ecosystem, everybody doing their own thing. And, much like Microsoft was an ecosystem, 30 years ago or
Yes.
something. And now Microsoft is with Satya Nadella is becoming an ecosystem, right? The only company that is more ego oriented is Apple. And they're somehow able to get away with it. It's kind of a miracle sauce that they have there. Uh, Rest in peace, Steve Jobs, of course. But there we can clearly see really what counts now is speed, agility, resilience, uh, combined innovation, hyper collaboration. And you can't do that when you live in a silo. So how are you going to innovate, and grow your revenues 8, 10, 15% a year when it's all in-house, right? The speed is just not going to be there, right? And so all these companies becoming ecosystems taken from others, hyper collaborating, hyper collaboration, not hyper competition, right? And of course, if you're looking at transportation and the car industry, for example, it is no longer about having a car or not having a car. It's about 100 options that you have for transportation, even self-flying helicopters and scooters and all of that stuff. So
Yes.
it's about multimodal transportation, mobility, right? And that's what those companies are realizing. It's not about my car and the best possible engine. It's about the ecosystem. And that is going to be true for tourism, it's going to be true for e-governance. And pretty much if you're not in an ecosystem, you probably don't have a chance unless you can be as good as Apple.
Wow. So one of the developments that have given me some of the most distress over the last few years is this abuse of the word truth. And it seems to me that being a technology centric individual who studied technology, and technology is based on, facts and science and all of this. I just can't stand when truth is in, subjective to everyone. When you're trying to make progress, it seems like there has to be some agreed upon definition of truth so you can move forward based upon that. What's your thoughts on truth and the impact of truth on the future?
I think there is, in many ways, we have to agree on sort of the bottom line of what we want. And I think we do actually agree on most of that, right? We agree that we want a good future, not a bad future. And we know kind of what that is, not being able to have kids because there's overpopulation or restrictions. That's not good, right? Not having self-realization, not having rights, not being able to eat. And I mean, these are all bad things that nobody wants, right? And I think if we're looking at the bottom line of the truth, one of them is that most of us want to be human. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And that means, unlike many transhumanists or so are proposing, many of us wouldn't be that happy of living in the metaverse only, or connecting our brain to the internet so we can compete with robots. And those are kind of fallacies of technology, wet dreams. But it's basically like this concept of being human is becoming more important. That's why I say we're moving towards a human renaissance. Technology is great, but after all, technology is not a religion. It's not a drug. Even some people are using it as a drug, of course, right? It is just a tool, and a tool helps us to realize our ambition. So, like with AI, I always say AI should be, as Stuart Russell says from UC Berkeley, the famous AI professor, as he says, it should all be about being competent, not about being conscious. Right? And this is that makes a big difference. I think technology that's competent, everybody wants. Conscious technology, sentient computers, and yeah, who needs that? Right? And why? Why would we have that? It makes no sense whatsoever to me, because that's what we are, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
our job, to be sentient. So basically, I think that is kind of where the truth is being buried in there a little bit. And one thing that's happened is, of course, because in democracy, it's really important to have places that stand for their truth, like newspapers, where we know the New York Times isn't the right wing instrument, right?
Right.
But we know that now with social media, we don't know that, because the AI is just the AI. It gives you whatever you would like, and that is my fear about the metaverse. Everybody living in their own compartment of,
Yes.
and that destroys democracy. Right? So, and we need democracy and collaboration to solve the next 10 years, because the next 10 years are going to bring lots of great potential, but also basically what I call perma change, right? It's like constant VUCA, one after the other for the next decade. Climate change, AI, healthcare, right? And great opportunities, but we're going to have to collaborate. If we don't collaborate, we don't find the truth together, at least on the bottom level. I always say, even the most remote people in Afghanistan or somewhere on the planet in Nigeria, they would agree on the bottom line of what it means to be a human. They may not agree on how many cars you should have or how much money you should make or so, but the bottom line, most people agree on what that is.
Mm. One of the statements you made in a recent presentation that has me thinking day after day, it keeps just coming back, and I keep pondering it. Is you said the future is what you believe it will be. Why is that an important concept?
Well, I forgot who said this originally, but I use it a lot. It's like data is the new oil. Our mindset contains the future, right? Because, and this is of course very American. I lived in America for 17 years. This is not a European statement. But basically, as we think about the future, Barbara Hubbard, the famous futurist, said that as we see the future, so we act, and as we act, so we become, right?
Mm.
It's very simple self-fulfilling prophecy. So, for example, we look at the future like a lot of millennials now, Gen Y, 71%, according to research, roughly also a little bit below that age, so roughly 16 or 35, 71% think that the future is lousy, right? That is because of what they're seeing. They're seeing all the dystopian films, they're seeing the social media. right? And as they are forming their opinion about what's not working, they don't see what is working, right? And they lose their hope, right? And Kevin Kelly, who talks about this a lot, he talks about protopia as the approach, not utopia, which never happens. It's a pipe dream, right? And dystopia, which happens all the time in television, on television. Uh, Protopia, which is a stepwise approach to creating the good future, right? And that is just so important, this narrative of the future, to create hope and move forward. I think really the future is created by optimists. I mean, every major breakthrough, even the CRISPR doctor in China that did the first CRISPR operation on babies, that was of course illegal, right?
Yes.
But it is optimism that drives progress, right? It is not people saying, no, 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 it can't be done. And we have a lot of that here in Europe,
Hmm.
We're a lot of times much more concerned with the past than we are with the future. you know,
Yeah.
and that is just not a good thing. We have to fix that.
Mm. So tell us about the Good Future project. Why did you start it? What's its purpose?
Yeah, the Good Future Project came out of the film and out of, then the requests I was getting from clients, they used to be all over the map, future of this and that, right? And now it's 80% at least is the good future, right? What is the good future? How do we make it happen? And because many people think of it so negatively. So then I figured it should go broader than my own work. And now I'm collecting a lot of leaders and great people who talk about the future in a good way. Like Christiana Figueres, who's not part of the project, but she was the climate change negotiator for the Paris Accord in 2015. She made that happen, basically. She was a former, I think, minister or prime minister or so in Costa Rica. Um, anyway, she wrote a great book about the future. I think it's called the world we make or something like that. And she talks about optimism being so relevant for this, right? And what we need to achieve is a narrative about why the future is great, why the future is better than we think, right? What are the facts, right? And what are the things we can hope for? And the bottom line is all of these things are solvable, the practical things. We just need to figure out what our priorities are, right? We want to solve climate change. It's all there. We can do that. 10 years, we can do that, right? It's just a decision making point, right? So the Good Future Project is collecting all these people to create events. We had our first online event 2 weeks ago. And then we're looking to create a real life event, the Good Future Festival, where people are coming forward and saying, okay, this is what we need to create a good future, to create a movement towards a narrative on the good future, to oppose all the bad narrative. But also, in reality, the future has been kind of hijacked by tech companies, right? Tech companies talk about the future a lot, right?
Hmm.
But the future isn't just about technology. There's something that we must do from the policy side and from the the social, cultural, civil society side to make that happen. It's both of those things together, right? So the Good Future Project is looking to bring it together to create events, to create content, to make films, uh, to tell the story of the good future.
Thank you so much for being with us today, Gerd, and sharing your insight, wisdom, and experiences. Thank you.
Thanks. You're welcome.